Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive. Today, we're going way back in time. Well, not really, but we are going to be talking all about how to talk about the past in English.
The past. It can be a tricky thing to talk about, but with the right tools, you can express yourself clearly and vividly.
That's what we're here for today, right? To give our listeners those tools. So where do we even begin with such a vast topic?
Well, let's start with the basics. Talking about our experiences, those things we've done or haven't done in our lives.
Okay, that makes sense. We all have experiences to share, so it's a relatable place to start.
Exactly. And one of the most common ways to talk about experiences in general is using the present perfect tense. It's perfect for those times when you're not focused on a specific time.
Like when you ask someone, have you ever been to Paris?
Hmm.
You're not asking when they went, just if they had that experience.
Right. It's all about the experience itself.
Yeah.
What happens when you do want to get specific about the time?
Hmm. I guess that's when we shift gears and use a different tense, right?
You got it. That's where the past simple comes in. As soon as you add a specific time reference, you switch to the past simple.
So instead of just saying, I've been to Paris, I'd say I went to Paris last summer. That last summer bit triggers the past simple.
Exactly. It's like you're zooming in on the timeline, going from a general statement to a more precise account.
It's like a smooth transition going from have you ever to yes, I did, and here's when.
You've got it. And that's what makes your English sound natural and effortless. But let's move beyond just experiences. What about talking about changes? How things were different in the past compared to now.
Like those times when you look back and think, wow, I've changed a lot.
Precisely. And for those situations, we have a great phrase, used to. It's perfect for describing something that was true in the past but isn't anymore.
Like saying, I used to be afraid of heights, but now I love going hiking in the mountains.
Exactly. You're highlighting a change, a transformation that's happened over time.
It can also be used for past habits, right? Like, I used to drink coffee every morning, but now I prefer tea.
Absolutely. Used to is so versatile, it can express a whole range of changes, from big life shifts to simple changes in routine.
It's like looking back on a previous version of yourself and appreciating how you've evolved.
It adds a touch of nostalgia, doesn't it? A longing for those bygone days. But what about the opposite scenario? Those things that weren't true in the past but are true now.
Like, I didn't used to like spicy food, but now I can't get enough of it.
Exactly. In those cases, we use the negative form didn't used to. It emphasizes the contrast, showing how you've changed or grown. But there's another tool for talking about past actions that are no longer true, and that's would.
Oh, right. Would is perfect for talking about those repeated actions or habits in the past. Like, every summer, we would go to the beach and build sandcastles.
You're a natural would paints such a vivid picture, doesn't it? It transports us back to those recurring moments that shaped our past.
It's like a time machine, taking us back to those carefree days of childhood. But let's not get too carried away with nostalgia. We've talked about experiences and changes, but what about telling stories?
Storytelling. That's where grammar really comes to life. It's about engaging the listener, making them feel like they're right there with you, experiencing the events as they unfold.
And a key part of storytelling is setting the scene, right? Creating that backdrop for the story to unfold.
Precisely. And that's where the past continuous tense comes in. It's perfect for providing background information, setting the stage for the action to come.
So instead of just saying, I walked into the cafe, you could say, I was walking down the street, the rain was pouring, and I saw this cozy little cafe and decided to go in.
Exactly. The past continuous paints a picture, creates an atmosphere.
It's like we're adding those sensory details, those little touches that make this story come alive. But I'll admit, I used to think the past continuous was only for long, elaborate stories.
It's definitely great for those, but it's also useful in shorter answers about the past. Imagine someone asks, what were you doing yesterday at noon?
Instead of just saying, I was eating lunch, I could say, I was having a picnic in the park with my friends.
Precisely. It adds a richness of detail, even in a simple response. But let's not shy away from those longer, more captivating stories.
I love those. The kind of stories that has twists and turns, unexpected encounters, maybe even a touch of humor.
Well, one key ingredient for crafting a compelling story is having a clear time reference. It's like anchoring the story in time, letting everyone know when the action takes place.
So you might start with something like last summer, or This happened back when I was in college.
Exactly. It sets the stage, gives the story a solid foundation, and once you have that foundation, you can start building the narrative, using the past simple to describe the main events as they unfolded.
It's like creating a timeline in our minds, placing events in the correct order so the story makes sense. But what about those events that happen before the main story begins? How do we weave those into the narrative?
For that, we have the past perfect tense. It's like our time machine, taking us back to events that happen before the main action.
So if I were telling a story about a trip I took, I might start by saying, I had always dreamed of going to Italy. It sets the stage for the trip itself.
Precisely. The past perfect had dreamed shows that the dreaming happened before the trip. It adds context, depth, and even a sense of anticipation.
And then we use a simple past to describe the events of the trip itself. We arrived in Rome, explored ancient ruins, ate delicious pasta.
Exactly. It's like we're layering the story, creating a rich tapestry of events that spans different points in time.
It's fascinating how these different tenses work together to create a coherent narrative. But when we talk about the past, we can't ignore those moments of reflection, those times when we look back and think, what if?
Yes, regrets. They're a part of life, aren't they? And English offers some powerful ways to express them. But let's take a quick break, and when we return, we'll delve into those if-only moments and explore how to articulate those feelings of regret with eloquence and finesse. Welcome back, everyone. We were just about to dive into the tricky world of regrets.
Those if-only moments that can sometimes keep us up at night.
Exactly. But instead of letting those regrets haunt us, let's learn how to express them in English. One common way to do this is using the structure wish plus past perfect.
Wish plus past perfect. Can you give us an example?
Sure. Imagine you say, I wish I had learned to play a musical instrument when I was younger. You're expressing a desire for something that didn't happen.
So it's like saying, I wish things had been different.
Precisely. And the past perfect tense, in this case, had learned, emphasizes that the action is in the past, something you can't change.
It's a way of acknowledging that missed opportunity. And speaking of missed opportunities, is that where the phrase if only comes in?
You got it. If only is another powerful way to express regret, like saying, if only I had taken that job offer, or if only I had traveled more before settling down.
It seems like both wish and if only convey a similar feeling, but if only feels a bit stronger, maybe even a bit more melancholic.
That's a keen observation. If only does often carry a stronger sense of longing, almost a wistfulness for a different path not taken.
It's fascinating how language allows us to capture those nuances of emotion. But remember, could have. We talked about it earlier when discussing missed opportunities. It can also play a role in expressing regret, right?
Absolutely. You can use could have on its own, like I could have been a professional athlete, or you can use it in a longer sentence with if.
So you could say, if I had trained harder, I could have been a professional athlete.
Exactly. It adds that layer of what might have been, highlighting the possibilities that were within reach but ultimately didn't materialize. But let's shift gears a bit and revisit the past perfect tense. We've seen how it helps set the scene and express regrets, but it also plays a role in explaining cause and effect, right?
You mean like showing how one action in the past led to another?
Precisely. Imagine you say, I was late for work because I had missed the bus. The past perfect, had missed, clearly shows that missing the bus happened before being late for work.
It creates that logical connection, explaining why something happened.
Exactly. It's like establishing a chain of events, a cause and effect relationship. But let's not forget about the past continuous tense.
Right. We talk about how it's great for setting the scene and adding background details. It can also emphasize how long an action lasted, right?
You got it. You can use it to describe actions that were in progress for a period of time, like I was studying all night, or they were playing video games for hours.
It really paints a picture of those extended actions, doesn't it?
It does. And remember how we talked about using would for repeated actions? Well, you can also use the past continuous with the time phrase to achieve a similar effect, especially when you want to emphasize that the repeated actions were annoying or frustrating.
Oh, I see. So instead of saying, my neighbor always played loud music, you could say, my neighbor was always playing loud music.
Exactly. It highlights the repetitive nature of the action, maybe even a bit of exasperation.
It's interesting how we can use these different tenses to not only describe what happened, but also convey our feelings and attitudes towards those events.
It's all about using language to tell a richer, more engaging story. And that brings us to another important point. Common mistakes to avoid when talking about the past. But first, let's take a quick break. We'll be right back to delve into those grammatical pitfalls and offer some helpful tips to keep you on track. Welcome back. We were just talking about some common mistakes to avoid when talking about the past in English.
Yeah, those little slip-ups that can happen even when you think you've got a handle on the grammar.
Exactly. So let's start with one that trips up a lot of learners. Overusing the past perfect. It's easy to get carried away with it, especially once you learn how to use it correctly.
So it's not about using it everywhere, but knowing when it's truly necessary.
Precisely. Sometimes the simple past is more than enough to get your point across. For instance, instead of saying, I had eaten dinner and then I went for a walk, you could simply say, I ate dinner and went for a walk.
It sounds more natural that way, right?
Exactly. No need to overcomplicate things if the order of events is already clear. Another common pitfall is mixing up the past simple and the past continuous.
Oh, yeah, I remember struggling with that one. It's about distinguishing between completed actions and actions in progress.
You got it. The past simple is like a snapshot, capturing a single moment in time, while the past continuous is more like a video, showing an action unfolding over a period of time.
So if I wanted to describe a scene where someone was interrupted, I would use the past continuous for the ongoing action and the past simple for the interruption.
Exactly, like I was enjoying my coffee when suddenly the fire alarm went off. The alarm going off interrupted the ongoing action of enjoying the coffee.
It's all about creating that clear picture in the listener's mind, showing how those actions relate to each other in time.
You're getting it. And speaking of clear pictures, another area where people often make mistakes is in their choice of vocabulary.
Oh, you mean using weak verbs or cliches?
Exactly. When we tell stories, we want to use vivid, descriptive language that captures the listener's imagination.
So instead of saying he walked into the room, we could say he stormed into the room or he tiptoed into the room, depending on the mood and the character's intention.
Precisely. Those word choices make a world of difference. And don't forget about using sensory details to create a more immersive experience.
Right. Instead of just saying the food was delicious, you could say the aroma of roasted garlic and herbs filled the air, making my mouth water.
Now you're talking. You've brought that experience to life with your words. And remember, the key to avoiding these pitfalls is to practice, experiment, and have fun with the language.
I love that. It's a reminder that learning English, or any language for that matter, is a journey, not a destination. And along the way, we're bound to make mistakes, but that's all part of the process.
Absolutely. The important thing is to keep learning, keep growing, and keep sharing your stories with the world.
Well said. And that brings us to the end of our deep dive into the art of talking about the past in English. Hope you've all enjoyed the journey as much as we have.
We've covered a lot of ground, from basic tenses to those subtle nuances of expressing regret.
But no matter where you are on your English learning journey, remember that the power of language lies in its ability to connect us, to share our experiences, and to make sense of the world around us.
So keep practicing, keep exploring, and keep those stories coming.
Until next time, happy storytelling, everyone.